Thank all of y'all for coming. This time we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's a special call, or special meeting location out at the community center, so we can have room for everybody. If you will, please join us for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. David Allen.
Dear God, Heavenly Father God, thank you, God, for this day, for another day of life, a gift that only you can provide. Father God, during this important meeting today, help us discern your will to do the important business that we need to do in your name, and also help us to discern the public's will and to do the public the business and care for them the way we should. In Jesus' name, amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we have a lot to go through tonight, we're going to try to expedite as much as we can, so we're not going to rush through, but we're going to try to get through everything as soon as possible. Public session, do we have anyone who would like to speak before the meeting starts? All right, move on to approval of the minutes. Commission meeting July 1.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have the committee and other meeting reports, operation and planning meeting. Favors?
Mr. Chair, the minutes here, we met on July 17th, and our discussion, we went over the current project, which I'm not going to read all that, and respect our time this evening. We spent the majority of our time talking about the fat oil and grease program, and you can read through that. I think Lynn has captured this very well. It's a very laborious read too. If you have problems going to sleep, it'll be a good read. But we did in that, we talked about this last time about the issue that some of our customers were having in different cities. And so we did suggest, and Chris is going to open that up, that regulation, open it up for reconsideration on part of the language that's in it. And Celia was there as Ms. Myers, as a non-board member. She was there representing Ohio. So anyway, we had good discussions on that. So we'll be bringing something back to you more formal at some point in the future. And you can read through that because I think Lynn must put that verbatim everything everybody said. She just had to report on that everything going up. I think maybe it was in there. But moving on to other compliance concerns. Got 3 new flow meters, just hit some highlights there. We're looking at the H2S, anticipation on the south side of the system going in, as well as Martin Street and a few other areas. But and going through this just to save our time this evening, I'll go ahead and move. We approve those minutes. Second.
Motion second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have finance administration meeting. Ms. Mike.
Thank you, sir. The Finance and Administration Committee met on July 23rd. The bulk of the meeting, we were reviewing the status of ongoing projects. And we did also discuss what the OFP had mentioned during their meeting as far as the tax rules and increase regulations. There were no action items on this particular one. Chris, I'm gonna use this as a time to share. If you have not joined the YouTube channel, subscribe so that we can make these live. Please go online and subscribe to the OJRSA YouTube channel. We need 50 subscribers so we can make these meetings live. So you're welcome. But that was really the bulk was going over those projects in this particular meeting. And then also the update as far as the master
Second.
Second, questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, Secretary Treasurer report, Ms. Stevens.
Your report's in section A of your paperwork. We have a total of, $10,511,431 in all the funds, including cash and investments. A couple of the accounts have big, balances in them right now because we received some big deposits towards the end of the month. In the O&M account, major O&M account, and then in our O&M account, we're getting some grant reimbursements back, so we will be, our outside accountant's currently working on that to look over my transactions, make sure everything's, right, and when the project is actually complete, we'll be refunding some money to Oconee County. Bank reconciliations were done for June. I have asked a couple times from superintendent to send us the letter so that I can present to you, but I haven't gotten it yet, so as soon as I get that, I'll email that out. We have a couple CDs that are maturing this month, we'll reinvest them through the WIF account. And the graph, this attaches to that is what this too, shows the flow. And I guess that's all I have to report.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have a second for Oklahoma County government update regarding matters involving the wastewater. Do we have anyone from the county who'd like to speak?
We're present, sir, but I do not believe we have comment this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brock. Move on to action items. Chris, you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So item one, just to touch on what this is for the next phase of us performing CCTV and clean work in the Bradley sewer system. And we advertised this competitively in Secure Sewer and Service Incorporated of Pleasant Grove, Alabama. Submitted a low bid at just over $211,000, which is $52,000 under what we budgeted for this. So it's our recommendation that we award this to them, and from what I understand from Kyle Lindsay, that they are ready to begin this as soon as they receive word from us.
Second.
Motion second, any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
All right, item two is for us to adopt the Oconee County Western Anderson County Sewer Master Plan. Everybody I think's heard the saying that failing to plan is planning to fail, but I think in this case, it may be a little bit different. The way that I'm thinking of this, and how I would like the public to think about this, is that failing to plan is planning to pay a lot more money for something. So as we move forward with sewer in Oconee County, what we would like to do is ask for the consideration for any project to comply with, or possibly comply with, what is written in this master plan. We're not mandating that anybody comply with it, whether it's the cities, private development, anyone, but we would like for any development to take consideration into that master plan when they're designing their system, the location of a possible pump station where it may be able to come offline at some point gradually. I've got Mr. Gillespie is here along with Captain Amadon, who worked on the project as well. They did the presentation last month, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer any questions that you all may have from them, or I will answer them.
Move to approve.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We want to thank you all for that hard work on that plan. That's a lot of work on that. We really appreciate
I guess everybody notices that I'm kind of moving advanced with this for time's sake. You're doing pretty well at times, so go ahead and include this one here as well. That we have just had very few, what we consider qualified applicants for operator openings as well as mechanic positions that we've had open. So what we would like to do, this has been in discussion with Mr. Lindsay here, as well as Kerry Kavanaugh, who helped us put together the compensation study and program that we have now. We would like to consider opening it up so that we can move a licensed individual up to the top level of pay that we would have just before any of the supervisory positions. It's one more level. I don't anticipate it generating or costing us any more than it currently is. We budget for promotable positions within the budget, but this would allow for room for advancement for staff that we currently have. It would also open back up, if granted, the job descriptions to also take account experience along with any license that may be required or desired for these positions in an effort to hopefully attract more candidates in the future.
This was, very well presented and greatly discussed during the operations and planning meeting. And, it made perfect good sense because of what they do with Rewa and Greenville and some of the other surrounding, counties. So, it was well explained and it just made perfectly good sense.
If that was a form of a motion, I'll second
Motion?
Yeah.
Motion and second. All right. Any more questions or discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Next.
Number 4 in your packet references Exhibit B, here, which begins with a letter from Lawrence Flynn as a recommendation for Brian Kelly for attorney work on construction contracts. We have one right now that is needing to be reviewed before we advertise it for bid. It involves a skip project that WK Dixon is working on for us. So Patrick Flynn, who was with Pope Flynn, he retired a year or so ago, a couple of years ago maybe. And Lawrence and his team did not feel comfortable with construction contracts. He says it's a very specialized field. He recommended it to Brian Kelly. Brian's bio and engagement letter is included in here. And with that being said, of course, we would suggest moving in that direction. As of right now, I believe that's one thing that's holding us up from advertising for that skip project. Correct?
Second. Motion and second. Any more questions or discussion?
Sorry, second.
Or Doug? No.
Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next.
This one, I've had one here specifically to approve change order number 2 between us and Code Utility regarding the Flat Rock Pump Station Replacement Project. But I would also like to add something to this, if I may, if there is to be a motion coming from this that may save us the time from having to go through this exercise in the future, if it's necessary. So these are the 2 change orders we've had with this project. They've both been fairly small, both less than $15,000 in cost. We hope that this is going to be the last one, but there may be one more only if there's going to be a materials quantity adjustment for that project. So with approving this, I would also like to ask if the board would consider, if there is a change order number 3, to go ahead and pre-authorize for me to execute that change order with Code Utility upon approval by RIA if necessary. Just to give you an idea of where we are with the budget for that project in case that's a concern with this. We developed the budget several years ago and it came in at about $1.37 million. And we are at about $1.33 million for this project, including the change orders and including the additional $10,000 we're, roughly $400,000 under what we did budgeted. And this is a skip funded project as well.
Chris, do you have an estimate on how much you think that third change order could be?
They think it's gonna be nothing. They think that it's gonna be $0, but he said if anything, there may be a little bit of pipe or some adjustments with that. And he said, in no way, if they could exceed $5,000, so I wanted that at $10,000 in there just to give it some kind of a cap in the event it came back at $5,001. But as of this morning, he didn't think that there would be anything as what he has right now. He thinks if anything, a little bit of site stormwater work that would be necessary, but that would be not all.
I move to approve as presented by are you the general manager, executive director?
Executive director.
Second, general manager.
What's your call?
Chris, for sure.
Commissioner.
All right, any discussion, any more questions?
Just for clarity, are we doing just the change order or change order plus the 10,000?
Plus the 10,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next.
And lastly, is I stated during the F&A committee meeting that we hope to have a final fiscal year 2024 report to present tonight for approval. And we do, and it's the last item in your packet to consider. Now, as this begins being adjusted, I believe correctly, and once Mr. Jason White performs the audit, but we want to go ahead and provide this to you and have this approved for record.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any more questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, move on to executive director's discussion and compliance matters.
So I'm still pretty good on time. Number one, environmental and regulatory compliance. We have 3 final clarifiers in our system, and 2 of those clarifiers have been down simultaneously within the last week or so. Kyle's team got one of them back up and running today. One from the 1980 build, one from the 1995 expansion. We have to do some extensive work, we believe, replacing a valve to be able to drain. Final clarifier number 3 identifies what the cause is, so we'll have to pump it down as well. So that's where we are. We've had no spills or other near misses or concerns. And again, as I go through, stop me if you have any questions. I'm just going to plow through them. Sewer South update. 3 things with that. I met with Ms. Brock with Oconee County a couple of weeks ago, and we decided upon a quarterly fee of $6,500 as opposed to us continuing to track the amount of time that we have, as well as mileage and equipment use, and allow her to stay if she feels otherwise. We felt that would be an agreed upon fair assessment, at least for the time being, as we get our feet wet with this new project and billing for the southern part of the county. So I think that may be the direction we move on. Ms. Stevens and staff and myself met with Terry Pruitt and Paula Oliver with Pioneer last week, and we discussed the billing for the system. And we have spoken with right over here, Daryl Parker, Luann. He's going to contact Pioneer. We want to make sure that this transition for Pioneer is as easy as possible. So we want to make sure that our base rates and meter sizes line up with what they actually use and have in their system, so that they don't have to rebuild this building structure specifically for us. So there may be some minor changes that come from that. I know that Parker went to hear back from Pioneer on that matter. And that is all I have regarding the Sewer South update. PFAS items that we have identified the potential for some concerns that we have seen in the levels that we had from preliminary sampling, but we don't know what our impact is going to be because we're still waiting for our EPS permit to be reissued. We received notice last week yet, because they're extending our current permit, which expired, I believe, July 31st of 2024. So it's extended until whenever the new one goes into effect. We have no idea what that's gonna be. We haven't seen a draft of it, or they say go through public notice, and then, final approval and issuance from the, but as of right now, we don't know how that's gonna impact us, if at all. Satellite sewer system GIS data request, the county's been assisting us for a number of years, really my entire time I've been with the sewer authority, with managing our GIS database, which has been a true blessing for us. But we're finally at the point where we're able to manage this internally with resources, and that an email was sent out earlier today, and Ms. McCall may have delivered a paper copy of just some data requests, so that we know we have up-to-date information from the cities on the systems that build. And that if you have the data, to be able to provide it to us by August 30th. If you don't have it, just let us know. We'll start working with you to obtain what we need. Sewer South Phase 1 and 2 odor and hydrogen sulfide concerns. This is an item that we mentioned in both committees, but Chairman Rainey was not able to hear this, but I've probably heard by now that, as we've suspected for years, and we continue to suspect because it's not a definite, we have no flow in the system as of right now, but we fully expect to have some severe issues with hydrogen sulfide that's going to generate odor complaints, as well as potential corrosion for the metal components associated with the system out in the collection system, pump stations, force mains, manholes. All the force mains are plastic out there, but manholes, some of those we expect to see degradation due to that. So the number one solution for that is flow. We need flow on that system. I passed out a chart at the 2 previous meetings that show how much flow we would need to be able to get to the point where the consultant feels we would be comfortable with not having chemical feed down in that area, but it's kind of wait and see once we start to receive flow on there. The only customer we know is coming on board right now is the Welcome Center. They will need to generate 10,000 gallons a day of wastewater. So we need, just for at the Welcome Center, exit 1 area, around 170,000 to 200,000 gallons-ish per day, we expect, just to get it where that force main turns over, like we would hope to see, which is a 5-hour turnover time, as opposed to nearly a 7-day turnover that we expect based on the pipe volume for that force main. Ms. Myers already let everybody know. You can also go to about the YouTube site. You can also go to our website. There's a link directly to it at ojrsa.org to take you there. Back to and Grease, Mr. Bronson asked about developing a schedule. We anticipate, we really hope to have something at the OMP committee at the August 21st meeting with some suggested language for revision. If we're not comfortable with where we are at that time, everything will be just pushed back a month. So August 21st, if so, maybe it would be considered the September board meeting, pushed back a month, would be October before we'll have anything. But we want to make sure we have everything addressed at this time. August FNA committee meeting, to do a training workshop that has come up. I'm going to be the one that would need to reschedule this. I know that Mr. Bronson said he wasn't going to be able to attend the one that we had in August, but I want to find out if there were any suggestions about dates to move that to.
Chris, that was your chance to get something passed without me. Do we have anything that you're expecting to come to that committee in particular?
No, sir, I do not at this time.
Do we need to have a meeting? Could we just cancel it? And if we're just reviewing finances, we can do that next board.
We can, that's fine with me. What I can do is, if in the next week or so, I feel that there may be something that we need to go, I can send out, either I can call, send an email out to select another date, but otherwise we just cancel it, have it, whatever we would need in September. But I don't anticipate bringing anything before
city to review?
If the board is done with postponing it, we'll just start back up in September. Unless you have something that arises and we need to schedule a meeting.
And I'll certainly send it, if you don't hear from me, that means I don't have anything. But if I do have something, I'll send an email out within the next week or so, asking, try to put that on your schedule as early in the calendar as possible. You're also busy as well. And lastly, three more things, Flat Rock Pump Station, which we now call Duck Pond Pump Station, that we reached a milestone on the 30th of July, where we hit substantial completion. So that station has been in service now for several weeks out, and that has been one thorn in our side that's been taken care of. I think staff have been very happy with it. It's the first submersible station we've had out in the system. All indications that I've received back from them, they like it. I think they're happy with it. I was concerned about it because it's new to them, but I think that everybody's pleased with where we are with it. After we received requests from the public, and I'm not sure if any of those members of the public are here tonight, but they had stated that they wanted us to add commissioner contact information to our website. So we have done that. It's under the contact tab, or ojrsa.org/contact on that page. And lastly, an update on the dewatering project. So we had a meeting last week with the project engineer on that. And we received our initial starting place budget for that, and it came back, it was about $5.3 million, which is considerably more than we thought it would be. It could be a skip funded project. The good thing with it is we know where we are, what we need to do to work down to where we would like for that project to be. So Kyle and his team, the operations team, are trying to value engineer this with the consultant who is KCI, Tom Walmart. I'm familiar with Mr. Walmart and his work. I think they're going to be able to do a really good job with it. They also are going to contact RIA, I believe, to see if there's any other funding options available. Also, to think that this is something that's a little bit above my knowledge. We might have experts in the room that may be able to know this better than me. But we were awarded about $9.6 million from SCIP. And it may be possible for us to go and obtain the amount up to the $10 million that we were eligible for with, I'm sure we got to provide a match for it. I've got in my mind, but it may give us a little bit more wiggle room possibly if we can get it down in the ballpark. So
What was your original price?
about 2.8.
And you're at 5.3.
Yes, sir. I have all faith in Kyle here.
There's a lot of fluff in that, I think.
Yeah. So we think we're gonna get it down, and that's all I have for my report. I'll answer any questions that you have.
You can breathe now. Look what you've ever got.
I was tasked to get it done, so I
You
got it
did.
done.
Good job.
Screaming all the way to the microphone.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions for Chris before we move on? At this time, we're gonna move on to the presentation of the regional sewer feasibility study. Sandy Mellon, W.K. Dixon, Joe Swain, W.K. Dixon, Darrell Parker, Will Inn Financial Services, Captain Amadon, from Open Maintenance. So you all have the floor.
Perfect. We're gonna present on this wall, so you guys will come sit down here, wherever you're comfortable.
And we would like to ask everybody just to hold your questions to the end, please. I can't see them over there. You cannot.
Everything's working perfectly.
markers.
Exactly.
You don't want to see mine.
What's it on? Okay.
It's on the,
There, is that it?
yeah, that's it.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. Too much? You guys good? Everybody good if we, okay, perfect. Okay, well, I know, everybody has been waiting for this. We appreciate you guys bearing with us. Let me just start off and just tell you guys, we did this very intentionally with how we did engagement initially. We met with the stakeholders, we did one-on-ones with the stakeholders, we asked for information, and then we felt like what we needed to do is go back and then review all of that and do our work, kind of outside of the stakeholder group. Not that we were trying to keep anything from anybody, but what we didn't want to happen is at the end of this for anybody to think that any one stakeholder had any more engagement than anybody else did. So at the end of the presentation, I have draft copies of the report without appendices. I mistakenly laughed and told Catherine and Jason that this report wasn't going to be anywhere near what theirs was. Well, I lied. But what Chris has, he's going to leave here today. He's got a flash drive with the draft report with the appendices, as well as a PDF of the presentation. So we've got enough copies for the board and Oconee County. That's who's leaving here with copies tonight. Everything else will be up on the website. What I will also say is that if we can have, what we would like to do, and the recommendations are the recommendations, but we will accept technical corrections, because I know we did a lot of discussion with all of you about your sewer systems and things like that. So if there are technical corrections, we would welcome those. We found one, this was done in Word, and the report was put into a format that makes it look, I felt like this needed to be something more than just looking like an engineering report. So there was one little thing that was left out when it got transferred. So there are going to be some corrections that will be made from the draft to the final. But we want to wrap it up because we feel like you guys have a lot ahead of you, a lot of really good things ahead of you, and we want to get you started on that. So we need to finalize the report and move forward.
So comments due in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah, if possible. 2 weeks, I think. Again, it's a lot of information, but some of it is stuff you guys already know. But we felt like this is such a comprehensive look at everything that we need to include a lot of information about the background and things like that. But we'll go through all of that here. So this is what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to do the overview, and I'm so sorry I'm standing in front of you, overview of the study itself. Then we're going to let Catherine talk a little bit about the alignment with the 2024 master plan. As you all know, we started this effort together. That's why Catherine was on both teams, because we felt like it was so important that there be collaboration and understanding between the two studies, because what was discussed in the 20-year needs absolutely has bearing on some of the things that we're recommending and how you guys need to look at the governance structure going forward. I'm going to talk just briefly about the evaluation process. Then we're going to tag team it on the evaluation results. Joe's going to handle the technical, operational, environmental compliance. Daryl will handle the financial, and then I'll wrap it up with the governance evaluation. And then we're going to end it where I know what you all are waiting for, which is the recommendations and next steps. So just real quickly, briefly, our consultant team, WK Dixon, Joe Swain and I are here representing the WK Dixon team. Catherine Amadon is here representing the Bolton and Mink team, and Daryl Parker with Wildan Financial Services. We also want to thank some of our key stakeholders and participants. Without all of you and being so, you guys were very, very engaged and very, very forthcoming, and I really do appreciate that. I think it was really important to hear the things that you all told us. Everybody was very honest and open and transparent, we felt like, in the discussions, and that was really, really great. And none of us would be here without our funding partner with the Rural Infrastructure Authority, so we appreciate them funding the study so that we can help you guys move on to the next step with the future of sewer in Oconee County. So I really felt like it was good because I know everybody is on pins and needles about this, that we start off with some positives, because there are some positives. You all have a very, very unique opportunity here. Not a lot of you were here when everything first began with Oconee Sewer Commission, and some of you weren't here when the authority was formed. But you now all have the opportunity to be a part of doing something to make it better. So it's a gift that you guys get this opportunity to do that. It's not all negative. We can build from some of the recent successes, and there have been some positives, and I really want to kind of focus on some of those. The changes in how the authority bill and meter the key St. Clair sewer system stakeholders. That was pointed out as a positive. Even the consent order that was issued to OJRSA was a positive, in that it really did kind of force some collaboration and force some decisions to be made that had not been made before. I'll also say that, and Chris, every time he talks through his report, he talks about how much his staff do with not a whole lot, and how hard it is to find good staff. You know, there have been a lot of good things. The last inspection, and every time we say DHEC, everybody knows that DHEC doesn't exist anymore. It is now DES, but we'll probably use DHEC a lot tonight. But your last inspection of the treatment plant was great. Your pre-treatment program inspection was great. So there are some positive things with the individual towns. And from the FY25 budgets, Walhalla is going to add a base rate to their sewer rate now, which you didn't have before. Westminster is looking at doing a $5 million bond to do sewer improvements. And all of you collectively are working on sewer projects that are in some form or fashion funded by either SCIP or local ARPA funds. Everybody's doing something now. Let's build from that, okay? And finally, there is a shared vision. There was a great deal of common themes that we heard among all the stakeholders. And at the core of that was that prosperity for Oconee County, that's what you wanted. You wanted to see Oconee County prosper, but you wanted to preserve those things that make it so special. That was common. We used this when we did our presentation to you guys before you hired us, because I wanted to include it again because I felt like it was so impactful, where you got the mission and vision of the authority and the mission and vision of the county. And I underlined some key words there, where there is already some shared vision about what you guys want to see with regard to sewer. Sewer is called out in Oconee County's comprehensive plan as being very, very important. We know it's a big deal. And I think that sometimes we forget that we do have this common vision, because we all get wrapped up in the things that happen on a daily basis. But I really wanted to bring us back to this and say, you guys do have a lot of things in common that you want. And that's where I want you to really dig in and build from all of that and move forward. So why are we here? Why are we looking at the governance structure of the authority? First of all, there was an underlying need. It bubbled up, and a lot of people recognized it, that there were There were a lot of, and this came directly from the narrative that was submitted in the grant application for this study. So, I mean, it was things like historical conflicts and mistrust among stakeholders. We heard that. You have complicated and misaligned government documents. You have blurred lines of responsibility. And to top all of that off, you have a relatively small collective sewer customer base. Individually, there are some tiny customer bases. Collectively, even as the authority, you're at under 23,000. So it's harder for you to do things as compared to folks that have 125,000, 500,000 customers. The resulting issues from all of that have led to multiple legal actions between and amongst some of the stakeholders. Deferral of sewer rehabilitation actions within all stakeholder systems, including the authority system. Limitations to the level and the amount of external financing needed for sewer improvements. And the lack of coordinated sewer planning for growth. That brings us to what the ultimate goal is for this study, in my humble opinion, is that it's meant to provide insight into why the issues exist and outline recommendations on what may be done to ensure that sewer operations in Oconee County remain vital for the future. The importance of this was recognized by RIA and demonstrated in them giving this grant to do this project. So with that, I'm gonna let Catherine take it here and talk a little bit about the master plan.
So first of all, just want to really thank OJRSA and also WK Dixon for recognizing the value of having our firm participate on both of those studies, because I do think that overlap is really critical. One example is we didn't do public engagement with this specific project because one, there wasn't the budget for it, and that wasn't really what was needed for this project. But we coordinated in advance when we developed the survey for the sewer master plan so that we were asking questions that would help inform this project. So that helped also utilize sewer funds better with this project. So we did it together. For that continuity. That master plan was presented last month at the board meeting. It is complete. Everything is publicly available as a reminder on OJRSA's website, including the public engagement results and all of the public comments that were received. We obviously left them anonymous, but you can read through and really digest and see how the public felt about the future of sewer in Oconee. I'd also just like to credit OJRSA really for embarking on a stakeholder-driven master plan. We had several stakeholder meetings, multiple public meetings, and it's really a proactive approach to sewer that is not common in South Carolina. I've only seen a few other reports that even remotely tried to do what OJRSA did, so really applaud you for that, because it's needed. It's not good to just kind of think, like, take the crystal ball and shake it and try to come up with a game plan for sewer. You guys really let the public inform it, which is huge. And it's really a foundational planning document for the future. So regardless of the results of this study and how you choose to move forward, that plan still stands as a really great document to serve the leadership as we move on. So one big thing that was identified is the recommended scenario for the next 20 years showed $312 million in investment. And I won't go through that full bullet point list of things that it identified. The key here is that's OJRSA's assets. We did not, in the master plan, drill down to the costs associated at the city level, which will be required for maintenance and operations, as well as any sort of upgrades to existing lines at the city level. So that's additional funds. This also doesn't touch on what Angie previously identified as some of the unknowns. We don't know how much PFAS could cost. Actually, Chris was talking about that earlier as well. We don't know what legislation might come down. It's at the water level, and so we could make some speculations based on what the water utilities are experiencing right now, but that's not included in this 312 million. That is a very large number, and Daryl will get into kind of the more specifics here. One more reminder too is that 312 is really thoughtful and tight to the existing sewer infrastructure and does not put trunk lines all over the county. It's really concise to the central portion of the county where the existing sewer is, as well as finding that investment down along exit 1, 2, and 4. So what's really important is as you plan and figure out how you're gonna invest for these capital improvements, it's going to be really critical that there is a decision-making body that can make these decisions that are uninhibited by agreements that I would argue currently impede the effectiveness of OJRSA. And the last thing I'll just touch on is public sentiment. So again, we had that overlap. We've talked about some of these last month, but I'll reiterate a few here. So, in general, both the public and stakeholders agree that balanced and controlled growth with respect to what makes this place such a really great place to be is really being called for. Also, investment towards maintenance and rehabilitation of the existing system. Everybody was all day long thumbs up for that, and a little more wary about investing on that new sewer infrastructure until the existing infrastructure has been taken care of. The public really cares about the following. They want to understand that mechanism that's used to fund sewer. There's so many comments, if you read through, where you're just like, oh, this is misinformation that they've digested. The public just doesn't quite understand how it works. They also don't understand who's in charge of sewer and how the results of any investment affect tax and ratepayers. There's definitely a call for transparency, which I think you all have strived for in the past, but it's like, you gotta keep feeding it to them because they're not following your Instagram account like they are some other things, right? So how do we get that message out a little more clearly so that the public is comfortable with the game plan moving forward? And then, of course, the protection of the natural environment and a huge call to protect farmland. The public is confused about which entity is really in charge and how, again, that money is being spent, and then how land use planning influences sewer planning. Definitely got a lot of comments about concerns about zoning and not supporting zoning specifically, but then a lot of support for other types of land use regulation or wanting to better understand how can we protect the natural environment and farmland potentially without zoning. So an opportunity to really educate the public and get out the word. And with that, I'll pass it back to Anna. Yes.
Okay, really quickly, I just wanted to highlight what the evaluation process was, what it looked like that we used. And I wanted to say here that in the RFQ and in our scope of work that was approved by RIA, we had to look at not only the authority, but we had to look at each individual collection system as well, because the intent was that there may be some opportunities around some efficiencies that could be gained through either operational collaboration, consolidation, something like that on the collection system side. So it wasn't just the authority that we looked at. We looked at all of the key satellite sewer system stakeholders. So we did collective and individual stakeholder meetings. The collective meeting that we had, that was very, very intentional because we really wanted to hear what you all thought was going great, or at least okay, what you thought was not going well, and where you thought things went wrong or what needed to be improved. That gave us the opportunity to focus in on some things. And when you consistently hear the same things from the same people, you go, maybe we got something here. Maybe this is what's happening. So that was really important. Then we followed those, we asked you for data. We had more one-on-one stakeholder meetings. We evaluated the technical operational evaluation from those data requests, as well as questions we asked you during the stakeholder meetings. We did the environmental compliance the same way, also pulled some DHEC now DSS records on sanitary sewer overflows and things like that. We looked at, from the financial side, we looked at your audited financial statements for, I think we did 5 years, 2018 through 2023. So we tried to get a really good historical picture of what was going on there. Then for the governance evaluation, we looked at all the documents and legal information, as well as discussed things with the attorney provided by OJRSA, Lawrence Flynn, on some legalities. We really didn't get him involved other than to talk through what potential roadblocks there may be from a legal perspective to do anything that we were looking at. And then what we came down to was the most feasible actions for success. And when we talk about that, I mean, let's face it, I'm gonna be blunt. It's gonna take every one of the key stakeholders right now to agree, based on your current agreement, to do something different than you're already doing. So we really had that in mind because we want you to be able to do something with this. We really want this to move forward. So common themes that we heard from all the stakeholders. There were some good, we mentioned those. The consent order has been a positive, the new building has been a positive. But we heard lots of things that make it a challenge right now to operate as the authority. We mentioned a lot of these, a lot, but I think the key, the two that over here on the side, the current government structure doesn't work, and those organizational documents are conflicting at best. And we've heard that consistently. So that's what allowed us to then kind of focus in on doing our evaluations. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe and let him talk about the technical operational pieces.
Yeah. So yes, my name is Joe W. Dixon. I was really tasked as part of this is trying to do a high-level evaluation of the technical components of each stakeholder at this point. The key component is a high-level evaluations. It was by no means a detailed audit, but wanted to make sure that we had a good idea of what was, get a good picture of what kind of operational status was within the area. If you take a look at here, we kind of use three key resources as guiding documents. One being the Guide for Evaluating Capacity Management, Operation and Maintenance Programs and Sanitary Sewer Collections. Engineers are not very good at making short titles, but this is a CMOM document, kind of like the guidelines that is provided by the EPA. Really, this is the key component of this is that this is kind of sets the guidelines of which a lot of those audits, and by the EPA's opinion, are valuable for a viable utility. You'll also notice they kind of very similar to those DHEC reports that we all go through all those inspections. The other component was really the man-hours requirements in the wastewater collection systems is under 50,000. Again, another EPA document. This was used to kind of set baseline of where we think, where a baseline, an approximation of what the kind of the staffing level should be to run a collection system. And then finally, what we can, the other key guidance document we used was the OJRSA sewer use regulation, specifically for the I&I component as defined, which was that kind of drove some of our I&I analysis. So next slide, these are some of the CMOM categories that we hit on, everything from engineering design, organizational structure, all the way down to management information, being how you track work orders, what is going on, system mapping, GIS, knowing where your system is, condition assessment, environmental compliance. These are kind of, if we would go through this, we use these kind of reflect, again, kind of that CMOM approach and trying to get that big picture and kind of try to evaluate each stakeholder on a high level of where everyone is. Kind of drive it down. I'm not expecting you to read every single one of these questions, so I'm not going to go read it off, but these were the baseline questions in which we set out at the beginning of this. When as we went through it, we wanted to during our conversations, and during the, request for information, questions, SED reports, SED records, and then also just the interviews and everything like that. We went through and tried to address each one of these questions, so that way to create a fair evaluation on apples to apples. The other component of this, of where we really did was the inflow and infiltration. We were tasked with doing and providing a high-level INI analysis of here. If you were at the February meeting, this would look familiar to you. This was based off evaluations from a December 24th, based off of December 24th rating. And we did the analysis on that. One thing that did kind of a key component of this is this rain event was was less than a 1-year event, while the Oconee Joint Sewer Uses says it's a 5-year event. So this is kind of a common baseline but modest event. As part of that, after evaluating the best available information, the consensus is that pretty much everyone has some I&I contributing a significant I&I to the areas. And there's really no one party that is isolated from that. So, what were some of our findings? One to kind of do this as part of our staffing analysis. There seems to be lower than recommended staffing levels across the board. There are variations of that. Some were closer to kind of where that estimated baseline is. Some were a little bit further apart. Limited capital improvements specific for sewer rehabilitation and repair. Regarding a lot of projects where either grant funded, which is terrific, or a lot of those kind of more development driven. There was kind of that lacking of that system rehabilitation component. And then also just kind of that, we found that just in general, this budgeting for sewer operations is a challenge. That was, again, varying degrees from different stakeholders. So the other component of is, I do want to kind of mention before I go into the stakeholder compliance, there have been some positives that have come out of this. As I think Angie had hit on earlier, since the consent order has come by OGRSA, had a DHEC group inspection on the pre-treatment and their treatments, which they've got really good scores with no deficiencies on them, which is a huge positive step and a sign kind of that we're moving forward just also kind of related to it. DHEC, or now DES, is very pleased with that progress. We're on the road, but we're not there yet. So, but as part of the other evaluation, all stakeholders really had some compliance issues and violations, or some sort of type of enforcement, whether that be DHEC or Oconee Joint, of those, whether there's DHEC consent orders, bonus violations, OGRSA enforcement, or sanitary sewer laws. I should mention this earlier. The one component we did kind of recognize is the Oconee County, while they do own assets, they do not have staff of that component. So they do not have any violations or anything along those lines, but they are also, it was not possible to do a technical evaluation on them because of they currently are contracted with OGRSA to maintain this. Again, the other component was significant I&I contribution by all stakeholders. This will need a continued investment to address. And the other kind of challenge that we've identified was inconsistent standards of enforcement. Each of the stakeholders, some following, have their own standards on how to do things. Kind of most evident one is different inconsistency would be the FALT program, and I think that was actually mentioned before we earlier this morning. So as part of this, we did on technically operational component, and we'll talk about the other financial components. Our evaluation did find that the conclusion was that there is a benefit to a partial or fully consolidated system. A lot of that was really to try to increase efficiencies kind of moving forward. Really, one, to address the I-9 abatement, being able to do it as a collective system and to be able to target and be more efficient to target. That would provide a potential benefit. In addition to that, enforcements, if there's one entity and one to enforce it, create kind of reduce the confusion on what is necessary as part of the design and enforcement components. We do think that consolidation presents that potential for that staffing gap. If there is that creates a position to where you can actually create more efficiencies. We're not indicating in order to have a task to be able to say it would fill that gap. That is a potential for that. In addition to that, less redundant equipment and different programs on those. And really, another component is really trying to have a kind of goes feed into that I-9 component is really having that consistent sewer asset investment and capital plan, being able to kind of move forward and make sure we're going and maybe more simple moving forward in the same direction. And then another component, while going more into the financial component, is the potential that Avenue would be able to create a more consistent retail sewer rates across the users. And one point we did kind of want to mention with that is that during our conversations, I believe multiple stakeholders did express a willingness to convey their sewer system to another entity, which we thought was encouraging, and encouraging that everybody wants to move forward and try to do things. Maybe not better, maybe in a different way. And Daryl?
Right, Joe. And good afternoon, I'm Daryl Parker with Wodan Financial Services, and several of you have seen me here before. As Joe mentioned, I'm going to be addressing some of the financial components that we looked at, and so let's see if the big button. Okay, all right, and then backwards too. Okay, perfect. So okay, it doesn't show up on the board. Okay, that's all right. So we did a historical financial review, as Angie mentioned, a 5-year historical for each of the stakeholder entities, including OJRSA. And I focused on historical too, because we've not looked forward. But that's one of the things that you're going to hear in this message today, is that each of the entities really needs to start looking forward at capital and financial impacts and that kind of thing. But the purpose of our analysis right now is just look at the historical situation, kind of identify where everybody is right now. We were planning to include West Union in that. Unfortunately, West Union has not completed or submitted their financial reports in a number of years. In fact, they show up as a delinquent on the state treasurer's list. So we could include them. So otherwise, it would be part of this. I'm not going to go into detail on each of these key performance indicators, but these were the things that we looked at. Operating ratio, days cash on hand, the current basic unrestricted cash position. Quick ratio, debt service coverage is a big one. That's if you're having to go out and issue debt for utility purposes, the markets really look at debt service coverage, and there are debt service coverage requirements on those loans. And basically all that is say, we've got our revenues less our operating expenses, not including depreciation, and so that's a net revenue number, and you divide that by the annual debt service requirement. And that number has to be at least 1, otherwise you don't generate enough revenue to pay for your expenses and your debt. And typically it's required to be at least about 1.2 or 1.25 by the requirements of your loan documents.
So that's a good indicator of your financial position. Liability and assets, we'll talk just very little about that. Depreciated assets, your percentage total, and capital additions. And we're going to obviously talk a lot about capital because we're hearing a lot about capital already and your capital needs and that's really what drives your financial picture. And by the way, there's a thorough discussion of each of these and definitions and all in the report. We don't need to go through all that today. So we look first at OJRSA, looked at the authority's numbers. One of the things that we did see that we were happy to see is an improving cash position. The days cash on hand have been steadily improving over the last number of years, which is good. That's something that we like to see. There was a really strong, really high asset liability ratio, but the primary reason was there's no debt. The authority currently has no utility debt at all. Not necessarily a good thing. That might be good for us personally. I mean, I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. I'm all about not having debt. You know, those of you who pay attention to Dave know what I'm talking about. But for a utility system, that's not necessarily a good thing, especially on a sewer system. Sewer systems are just inherently expensive to build. The assets themselves are very costly. The operations are very costly. You wouldn't necessarily use debt to fund operations, but what you can do is use debt to fund capital so that you don't have to raise rates so much to fund everything else. So here again, something to think about moving forward for the authority. It appeared to be very little capital spending in recent years, and which kind of relates to the no debt part, and it kind of deferred. And we're already hearing from Joe, for example, about deferred investment in system assets. There's just not been sufficient reinvestment to maintain facilities and stay in compliance, those kind of things. We see something similar with the other stakeholders. Now, everybody's financial reporting documents were different. Some were the water and sewer might be included together as a combined enterprise fund. Some included water, sewer, and electric. So it was hard to do an apples-to-apples comparison, and you'll see that when you read through the report. But we did comparisons for what we could do. One of the things that we did find, and we heard this during some of the stakeholder meetings, is that in a lot of cases, the sewer system is being supported by one or two of the other utility operations. And that's not uncommon. We see that. I mean, I see that a lot because in my world, I have to go in and look at the financial data and do a cost of service study for rates for water and sewer typically. And the sewer is oftentimes not self-supporting. So that's not uncommon. So what we're seeing in the financial reports is not uncommon. The question is, do you correct it, and if so, how? Here again, kind of like the joint authority system, kind of minimal capital spending in recent years. Here again, sometimes we couldn't tell if capital spending was even for sewer or if it was for water or electric or one of those. Same kind of thing. It seems like a lot of deferred investment. I mean, I know that there's sewer lines in the ground probably for each of the systems 100+ years old, and that's kind of one of those things that leads to breaks and leads to issues with compliance and that kind of thing. So, we talked a little bit about capital, and you heard Catherine's number earlier, $312 million. That's over a 20-year period. And so we looked at, well, let's just look at the first five. About a third of that is just in the first 5-year period. So almost $90 million over the next 5 years. That's a big number. And so we said, well, let's see what that means. So I did just kind of a simple amortization, debt funding assumption. Assume 25-year term, which is pretty standard for large utility projects. Now that's not necessarily a valid assumption in this case because the current agreement between all the entities for the sewer authority is there's 18 years left. So you couldn't even go issue 25-year bonds if you wanted to. because the financial market would stick to the 18 that you could actually say, yeah, we know for sure we're going to be around for 18 years. But anyway, for kind of financial look here, we're sticking with the 25 years. We've assumed interest rate about 5%, probably the current number is around 4%, so that's a little conservative. We've assumed some issuance costs, because when you go to the bond markets or get borrowed money, there's other players, attorneys involved and stuff, so you do incur some costs there. We mentioned a little bit already about debt service coverage. That's the minimum DCS. We've assumed 1.25 as bare bones. That's not financially sound, but that's typically a minimum requirement. And then we saw the principal amount is almost 90 million, so I plugged that in. So the result was, from the current revenue level of the Joint Sewer Authority, those revenues would have to increase by 157%, roughly 2.5 times, just to pay that $90 million in debt over 25 years. So that's a big number. That's a scary number. I get that. So now you got to remember, this is not based on any kind of financial plan. Obviously, before anybody would issue that kind of debt, there would be a financial plan developed, and it doesn't factor in customer growth or anything like that. So it's really just kind of a starting point. But what that means is, we kind of broke it down by 10 million chunks. So maybe if you didn't issue 90, but you could issue something less, maybe there's some cash you could contribute. Basically, every $10 million in borrowing is about a 17.5% increase. And that's just to the wholesale rate. That doesn't include what's happening on the stakeholder side for their retail collection system. So let's, here again, it's a big number, maybe kind of a scary number, but in order of magnitude is probably not far off. So what we don't know is, and I mentioned kind of that's just for the wholesale side of it. We don't know yet really the capital needs, and Joe mentioned that a little bit. There's been a little bit of look on the kind of retail side from the stakeholders, but we don't really know the overall capital needs for those sewer facilities. So we didn't factor that in, But what you'll see this now, you'll hear it again. Really, each of the stakeholder entities needs to go in and develop a CIP, a capital plan. And when you're doing that CIP, it's not just, it shouldn't be, as Joe sometimes says, a wish list. Like, oh yeah, we want to do this, we want to do that. You really got to identify the projects that you need to do, prioritize those projects, identify not only the funding need, but where's the money going to come from? The sources and uses. Are you going to issue debt? Are you going to have access to grants? Hey, if you can get free money from the state, God love you. But you can't always count on that. Maybe developer contributions. Maybe some of it just gets funded through your operating budget out of your current rates. So it's got to be kind of a combination of a capital and financial plan to have any real value and move forward. Well, that's a little tough to see. So there's the picture in the report is much better. So those of you who get a copy of the report, you'll be able to see it. Basically, this is a comparison of, so our team is over here on the left. So we've got the stakeholders, we've got, they're broken out by kind of size of service population. And so these are rates at 5,000 gallons of use, kind of a typical residential customer use. And this is just on sewer, obviously. And let's see how you compare to others. Currently, the current stakeholders kind of fall within the proper range. Now, where we see Oakland Joint Regional Sewer Authority there, that's the wholesale piece of the rate. So for each of the member cities, their rate that's up there includes that $36.95. So when we're talking about the revenues for Oconee Joint having to go up by 157%, if that happens, that turns that $36.95 number into about $95 per month for a typical 5,000 gallon customer. So that's how much just that wholesale piece could go up. Here again, that assumption doesn't factor in any growth or any grants or anything like that. But just here again, order of magnitude, that's kind of what we might be looking at and talking about. And then again, what's happening on the retail side of that, we don't know, but that needs to be considered. Now, I believe with that, I can turn it back over and let Angie wrap us up there. All right.
What I'll add to that, Ray, what we did is we looked at other sewer utilities kind of in the upstate area. So Anderson, Greenville, Pickens, in this general area, that's who's included in there. We even called out other entities that are similar to the authority, which are trunk and treat. So you'll see that called out, and you'll see we've also put called out those entities that feed into a trunk and treat. So you can kind of see where that base rate, that wholesale rate factors in. One I will say that you will see it on there and you'll go, what? The difference between Pelzer and West Pelzer. Pelzer right now on there has one of the lowest rates, but that's going to change because they are now going to be part of the trunk and treat, just like West Pelzer is, and you see West Pelzer now has the highest rate of anybody in the area. So just bear that in mind. But I think the base fact is you guys are kind of right in the mix. Westminster has some of the higher rates in the general area, but you're not at the low end. But all that has to be factored in as you guys go through this process, and you're looking at not only rate sufficiency, but rate affordability for your customers. We know that's a big deal, and you've got to take that into account. And so we thought it would be important to show you kind of what that looked like across the area. So let me just start off about the governance discussion and say that we looked at a lot of documents, and the ones that are highlighted in the report is not going to be every single legal document that's out there. It is really focused on those that basically talk about how the sewer governance entity was formed, from the Oconee County Sewer Commission to the authority, and then the operational agreements that are currently in place between the authority and the county. So those are what we focused on. We kind of walked through those historically. We read them. We scratched our heads. Especially when it kind of got to the authority piece, it was kind of like they were all just dumped into one document, which that's probably one of the issues is they were dumped into one document, and some of them are contradictory to what's in one document. So we felt like it was really important to at least lay the foundation of all those documents in this report. So what we considered when we looked at this evaluation, all the things that came out of the technical aspects, the financial aspects, we also talked to other joint water and sewer authority entities in South Carolina, the ones that are formed under the same piece of legislation that you guys are. And we looked at the board structures, we looked at all those historical conflicts, we looked at some just general organizational, the financing challenges that y'all have, including additional potential members, growth and planning concerns, all those things that Catherine mentioned with regard to the public engagement from the master plan process. We took those into account. And then we looked at, okay, so what is available in South Carolina? These are not everything that's available in South Carolina, but there are some things, like you guys aren't going to go backwards and become a private nonprofit utility. You're just not going to do that. So there were some of them we just kind of threw out. And we focused on these pieces. So privatization, it's out there. You can do it. If there are plenty of for-profit private utilities that may be interested in buying your systems or buying the system. But we didn't feel like that was the way you guys wanted to go. We felt like you wanted to be in control of your destiny going forward. Intergovernmental operational agreements. Those don't fix the authority, But what they do is they could provide for some of the collection systems. Maybe some of you guys are contemplating or will continue to contemplate some sort of consolidation. And those intergovernmental operational agreements could allow you to take that intermediate step with someone, another entity, another stakeholder, whatever it may be, and see what that looks like from that perspective without having to go all the way to full consolidation and just get your residents used to it, things like that. Consolidated government, we included this in here because it has been mentioned. It technically is allowable in South Carolina by state law, but there are some pieces of that law that apparently would have some legal challenges, and it's never been tried in South Carolina. It's been contemplated, it's been discussed, but it's never been tried. And when we talk about consolidated government, I'll give you an example. Augusta, Richmond County in Georgia. So the city of Augusta and Richmond County came together and they formed one council, they operate as one entity, combined city and county. That's what we're talking about. Special purpose district. This was by far one of the main mechanisms that was used in South Carolina, particularly by counties, to get into the utility business for one, because they were not allowed by the state constitution to do so any other way. Well, Home Rule changed that, and when Home Rule came about, Home Rule also meant that there can be no other special purpose districts created in South Carolina. There are special purpose districts that have now morphed into what they're calling multi-county organizations, where their enabling legislation has been modified to let them operate in multiple counties. Examples, Grand Strand Water and Sewer Authority, Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer Authority, Renewable Water Resources. A lot of those folks are now, they started as special purpose districts. They still are special purpose districts, but they've now kind of morphed into that. But the special purpose district in and of itself does not provide a vehicle for you guys because we can't create them anymore. You would have to do something else, like a special tax district or something like that within the county. Then there's the Joint Water and Sewer Authority, which is what you guys are currently organized under. Let me just say that we still believe that the particular enabling legislation for that is very broad, and that was intentional to give you the flexibility you need to do what you need to do based on your specific situation. And to underscore that, every Joint Water and Sewer Authority I talk to they're not organized the same. I mean, everybody's just a little bit different. But I will tell you that none have the situations that you guys have. Your particular agreements, your particular structure is very different than everybody else. So key findings. The foundational documents have led to many of the current challenges, and they've got to be revised. The board composition needs to be restructured. A relatively small sewer customer basis, both collectively and individually, adds to the challenges that you guys have. Now, Oconee County is now in the sewer business. You heard us talk, they've got sewer. They don't have a sewer department, so a lot of the evaluations that we did, but they're in the sewer business, but they have no formal voice on the authority board. And that's created more confusion and potentially more conflict, and probably a lack of some of the more coordinated efforts with regard to what we were talking about with planning and road and things like that. The increased number and complexity of sewer regulations that contribute to operational and financial challenges, that is all the PFAS stuff. Y'all, it's coming. It's going to happen. All of these numbers that we've given you, and I hate it, I know it's scary, but that doesn't even contemplate what you may have to do to treat PFAS and things along those lines. If you get into, I know you guys are exploring the Regional Biosolids Authority. If you get into something like that, that is another component that comes into your wholesale rate that you have to have in there. So it's going to get tougher, but it's getting tougher for everybody. So it's not just you, but you already have these things like I was talking about, that small customer base. You don't have as many people to spread it around over than some other folks do. There are going to be increased regulatory requirements with regard to consolidation of public utility systems. It's happening. There is a proposed rule out there from the EPA right now. Right now it's focused on water, but it's called the water system restructuring rule. And basically what it does is it mandates that state primacy agencies, so the Department of Environmental Services in South Carolina, would have to initiate, based on a standard framework, consolidation activities for any system that has consistent non-compliance or viability concerns. So EPA's, I mean, it's coming. There's already something out there. If you go and get state revolving fund money, it's called the Utility Sustainability Assessment. You have to complete that before they will approve you for a loan. It basically covers every single facet that we covered in this study. And they want to make sure, this is basically you proving to them that you are going to be sustainable and you're going to pay back that loan. And we all know how the SRF program in South Carolina touts that they have a 0 default rate. They don't want to default, and they're going to look at that. We're even seeing our professional organizations, the American Water Works Association. They looked at what they call this big process called Water 2050, looking at what it's going to take to move us to 2050 and get there in a sustainable, viable manner. And one of the pillars of that was the One Water governance. And it talked about having boards that are knowledgeable, apolitical, competent, all of those things that are critical for long-term success of utility. Looking at balancing efficiencies and needs that you can do when you look at regional consolidation. And looking at rates that reflect the full cost of service and account for system investment in order to be sustainable. So all of those things kind of come together in where we are right now and what we're looking at. When we looked at options for the authority, this is basically what we considered. We considered lots of options, but it came down to this. You can do what you've always done and expect what you're getting right now. You can terminate your current agreement and basically reconstitute the authority underneath the Joint Water and Sewer Authority Act with a new agreement with changes that make you more effective and efficient to move forward. Changes to board composition, not compensation. Elimination of barriers for financing debt that you have right now. Considerations for retail service. Okay, I get that the authority technically is in the retail business, but that's through an intergovernmental agreement with the county. Your current agreement really doesn't lay out the path and the process and the procedures for how the authority gets into the retail business, or even if it should. And that needs to be addressed. And there needs to be an equitable approach for sewer rate structures. Or you can terminate the current agreement, convey the sewer trunk and treat line assets to another viable sewer entity. With regard to stakeholders, same thing. Let me just say, and I'll mention this probably again in a minute, but this particular aspect can happen no matter what happens with the authority. You guys control your own collection systems. You can individually decide you want to do something, but it doesn't have to be the group deciding. So just understand that. But just like with the authority, you can maintain the status quo with no changes to ownership, operation, and maintenance of the individual collection systems and keep rocking on. Or You could work with another stakeholder or other viable sewer entity on your individual collection system and convey that to them. Or you can develop those operational contracts with another entity to kind of stick your toe in the water on that aspect and see if that's the way you want to go. So our recommendations. Okay, I mentioned we're status quo, we're not doing that. That's not our recommendation. So there were two other options up there, and they're listed in the report as primary and secondary. But we believe strongly that you have to vet both of those simultaneously in order to fully understand what that means. We want you guys to be in control of your destiny and to work out this agreement. But we also understand that it may reach the point when you're looking at financial obligations and things like that, that you may want to consider something else. We feel like you need to have all that information while you're looking at both options. Not telling you that you have to go that other direction, but we just think it needs to be vetted at the same time. So, here's what we're recommending. First of all, I probably have to move over here so I can see everything. First of all, we're going to recommend a 5-member board right now. 1 representative each from Oconee County, Seneca, Valhalla, and Westminster. And then 1 representative appointed by the Oconee County Legislative Delegation to serve as an at-large member on the board. I will say, and this is called out in the report, we thought about West Union, but one of the issues that we are hearing from the financial pieces is that one of the concerns is that you're only as strong as your weakest link with regard to the authority. And so at this point, I don't know that West Union helps you. I think you can have them have a voice through an at-large member on the board. We're recommending that the board voting policy be for just normal matters, 1 vote per member, all weighted equally. And then there be a weighted structure for things like debt. And that could be based on proportionate flow, but it needs to be outlined what that is and how that changes over time if it does change. That's from some of the other authorities, that's how they do it. If it's just regular matters, it's 1-to-1 vote, all the votes are equal. If it's about debt, then they have an apportionate weight on those votes accordingly. Debt approval policies. Again, going back to what other joint water and sewer authorities do, you can, in your governing documents, your governance agreements, pre-authorize certain types of debt for maintenance. So it doesn't have to go back and do all of that. You can also eliminate some of right now the way it's structured, every council has to unanimously approve, all councils have to unanimously approve all debt. And that's tough. That really puts you guys in a tough position. So that needs to be restructured to give you guys a chance to get some financing and do some of these things that you need to do. New members, we're saying starting with 5. And the reason we're saying that is because you're relatively small. That covers all of the people right now. But you may want to bring some folks in later. So you can set that up in the policy on how you add people, new members to your organization if you want to do that. But most everybody we looked at, it was 1-to-1 based on who was who was represented on the board. Retail provisions, I mentioned this. Not saying you guys have to be in the retail business, but you kind of are right now in the retail business with really no process. So we think that needs to be part of this. If you want to be in the retail business, let's get it clean. Let's get it back where it's not a headache to manage with regard to the retail and the wholesale and all this stuff. You can do that. You can look at your equitable rate structures. You know, if your if provisions are ultimately added, you should establish how rates would be established to eliminate the complexities of the current accounting system, if you will. Funding of growth, it should detail how you guys want to fund growth. Because right now, I mean, honestly, if you look at what the trunk and treat assets really are, that technically benefits everybody. And so you gotta look at how you fund the growth and how that is factored into how you pay for improvements at the treatment plant, all of those things. And finally, the agreement term. We mentioned there's 18 years left on your current agreement. I get that there are automatic renewals, but honestly, what the finance folks are telling us is they look at that base term because they don't know what's going to happen. Is somebody going to back out at the end of the 18 years? They don't know. So we're recommending at least a 40-year term. That covers you for the length of most financing vehicles out there. So with regard to the stakeholders, again, the modification of the authority itself is priority. Because what may happen with the authority let's say the authority gets reconstituted and everything is good and you guys are going to be in the retail business. Well, then one of these collection systems may say, hey guys, I really would like you to take my collection system. And then we can, staff can be absorbed to a level, we'll have efficiencies. So that may inform some decisions around that. But just like we said before, your options include, conveyance of your collection system assets to OGRSA under a new governance structure, conveyance to another stakeholder, or conveyance to another viable entity. I mean, you guys can make that choice on your own. If you have a private, for-profit utility knocking at your door and want to pay you some money to buy your collection system, that's up to you. They're probably not, but yeah. So, one of the things, the next steps, let me just say, we know that this is the tip of the iceberg, and there's so many things that are going to have to be done, but we felt like we've got to get started on, let's vet those two options. We want you guys to redo this agreement and reconstitute yourselves and come back, be the Phoenix. Let's get this, let's do it right. I told you had a really great opportunity. But we also want you to have all the information. So what we are recommending, I know this looks like a lot when I told you we were recommending a smaller board, but there's method in our madness on this one. So an 11-member ad hoc committee to fully vet these recommendations. And this committee would report back to the OGRSA board in Oconee County. Not going to be any existing standing committees, so not the F&A or not the OEP committee. Include no more than one member from each existing stakeholders. That would be the authority, like authority staff, Seneca, Walhalla, Westminster, Oconee County. Okay? Yeah, I'm adding Oconee County. One member from Oconee County. One member with documented experience in utility management, preferably in South Carolina. One member with documented experience in legal aspects of utility governance in South Carolina. One member with documented experience in utility finance. One member with experience in utility aspects of economic development. One member with documented experience with environmental utility compliance. And finally, an ex officio member with the understanding of state requirements concerning sewer to serve as a facilitator. We have some examples, e.g., I didn't want to get into mandating to you guys who needs to be on here, but I think you can kind of get where we're going. You've got 5 members who have the historical knowledge and understanding of what's gone on. Then you've got 5 members with experience in stuff that you guys are gonna have to undertake. That can serve as sounding boards, give you information, that sort of thing. And then you have one facilitator to kind of be the ringleader and keep everybody going forward. Then we're saying that, and I think you guys saw this coming because I think Chris may have budgeted for this, but we feel like that there needs to be a detailed financial rate study for the authority that will consider the 20-year capital improvement needs outlined in the master plan. We want you to engage legal counsel, and not only about the agreement, but engage legal counsel that can kind of give you information with regard to timeline and process for not only the new agreement, but if you were to consider any kind of conveyance to another entity out there, what does that look like? What's the timeline? What do we have to be concerned about? What do we have to consider? All of those things. And give that to the ad hoc committee to be a part of that process. They were saying, going back to a lot of things we heard, each stakeholder, each sanitary sewer system stakeholder needs to complete a minimum 5-year CIP. This doesn't have to be an engineer doing it if you do not want that, but it needs to be beefy enough and include repair and maintenance and rehab, not just growth components, so that you can then inform to a detailed financial rate study. We want it to mean something. We want that financial rate study to have a component that is yours with regard to CIP. But you guys really, the impacts to that 20-year projected needs of the authority, we feel like you guys really need to dig into that and see what that's going to mean to you guys individually, because that may then just make you have some decisions on what you want to do with sewer going forward. And you can't do that without the information in order to do that. And if at any point as you're going through this process, even though we're talking about it in parallel, that you guys say, yeah, we are at an impasse, you send the little note out to the judge and say, yeah, we can't, we're calm, we can't go forward. Then immediately we need to start some discussions with other viable sewer entities, identify who those may be, and start discussions with them if at all possible. Because you don't have time. I know 18 years sounds like a long time, but it's not. And I know that it sounds like that you got a lot of time until maybe some of these things have to happen, but growth is happening. People want to come to Oconee County. You guys need to collectively be prepared to move that growth where you think it needs to be and maintain your sewer systems and maintain what everybody loves about Oconee County and why everybody wants to be here. So from a timeline perspective, we're asking that you establish the ad hoc committee within 45 days, engage legal counsel to inform on the process timeline for a new agreement, as well as a potential for any kind of interaction with another viable entity within 60 days. 60 days for stakeholder CIP development, completion of the OJRSA financial rate study within 6 months, completion of stakeholder financial rate studies within 6 months of CIP development, and then the ad hoc committee report back within 6 months of ad hoc committee formation on where you are and what you're looking at going forward. I will say, I know some of this stuff costs money. Unfortunately, I was not given a blank check by Bonnie or anybody else at the state to bring in here today, the giant big check. But I think what I can comfortably say is that I think if there is forward collaborative progress, that they will look favorably on that and be more willing to participate with you in moving this forward, than if there is not. I think I can reasonably say that. I can't commit to anything. And again, these are the first steps, and we get it. This is not going to be easy. We don't claim that it is. It's hard work, but it's an opportunity. I think if I asked every stakeholder in this room, do you want to be in control of the destiny of sewer in Oconee County, every single one of you would say yes. And that's what we want too. But we also want you guys to look at it and vet it with as much information as you possibly can, so that you can make an informed decision. And if there has to be something, even individually, I want each individual municipality to feel confident going forward in what does this mean to me and my citizens. That's what that's what, at the end of the day, that's what you're gonna have to look at. And we feel like this is at least gets you to that point where you can start making some decisions, maybe with more information than you have in the past. So with that is it. I think, again, I will tell you guys that I do believe strongly that the Joint Water and Sewer Authority does give you, that particular structure does give you a lot of flexibility. But you gotta fix what you got right now, because it's not gonna work going forward. Okay? That's all we got. And I will, I guess we will accept any questions anybody has.
I have some.
Sure. I knew you would, Ken.
Okay, so this is a hyper-technical one, so I'm gonna get this one out of the way.
Okay.
Joe, you said if you go back to the slide and the documents that you reviewed, there was one where you looked at a study that was up to 150,000 people, and it was in 1973.
Yes.
There's a bit of separation between 150,000 people here and 1973.
Yeah.
I was a year old.
Yeah.
I don't even think you weren't born. Neither was
Yeah,
Cat.
no, trust me.
I don't think some of our press corps in here were born here. Maybe that one guy was. Where'd he go?
Yeah.
He was here.
Yes, you're correct. And I would indicate that that's why it's a high level, and this is to be considered a high level.
And they still use that. It's just a framework. So it's not, what it is it's a population and number of staff that you need to, so if anything, it's conservative.
Right, because
So-
technology would have changed some of those staffing models.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, and we recognize that, but that still is one of the things that EPA uses to just give a baseline of the bottom, the staff that you need to operate a sewer system.
Okay, I mainly asked that question so you know I paid attention. Second question, what is the name of a viable multi-county organization? You mentioned that throughout. One I can think of is REWA. I guess there's one over in Anderson and
Spartanburg
Lower
Sanitary
Greenville
Sewer
County.
District.
Yeah. There could be a number, or you could create, again, I'm not gonna call anybody out because we have not had those conversations with any one entity, but it's an opportunity to vet if there were interest in any other entities that can either are or can become multi-county organizations through a change in your special purpose district legislation.
So you were, my take from your presentation is that you were suggesting one that exists today, not
Yeah.
one that may exist.
It doesn't have to be, but more likely, it should be one that exists.
That already exists. And there any that touch us? I know you don't want to call one out, but I'm desperate for you to call one out. Like I can't quite get my mind
No,
around.
there are not any that touch you, but that doesn't mean that some that are around couldn't do it.
They would do it almost as like a satellite opportunity.
Could be. Yeah.
Is it possible to, connect that with another state like Georgia? Counties that would be next to us?
That gets tough, because the legal requirements in each state are different, and Mike was back there, but even to the extent, so I was involved in a similar situation with North Carolina, and that was just sewer service, from Grand Strand into North Carolina, and it was challenging, because then it was about, okay, so who trumps who with regard to enforcement, environmental enforcement? Is it DHEC or is it DEQ in North Carolina? It gets messy, and I think we're trying to get you all away from messy, and that would be, I would not go that route.
Now, my last question is, today we're receiving this, I think you had it. It's not called draft.
It is, it's draft on there, you can't see, but it is draft.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm interested in when your 45-day clock starts ticking.
Once we finalize it.
So that could potentially be at the next board.
Correct.
Very good work. Thank you.
Have a board meeting a while back, somebody asked a question about how other counties handle their sewer service. Chris, he worked for Rewalk, and he made the statement that Greenville bit the bullet and spent money up front. They expanded their sewer system with excess capacity. And that's one of the reasons that today, evidently, they're not facing, I guess they're getting closer to it, they're not facing a problem like we're facing here in Oklahoma. Now, I won't get to hindsight. The organizational documents of the old Oklahoma Sewer Commission prohibited using property taxes to expand sewer service. And that prohibition continued to 2012. Now, you looked at the history. Did y'all, was that unique to Oklahoma? Or did other counties do it that way, or how? Is Oklahoma unique in that?
It's unique. It really is. There's a lot of things about what's going on is very unique to Oconee County. And I will say I'm not sure if Chris was talking about the city of Greenville, but there is a ton right now of sewer consolidation that has been going on, and one entity has been footing most of that bill, and that's Metro Kinetics from that standpoint. And they've been consolidating all of these little mill, sewer districts, fire and sewer districts, and little mill villages across Greenville. So it's, go ahead, Chris.
I believe what Ms. Radden brought up, it has to do with when Jason Gillespie presented what we needed for our impact fees,
Okay.
why our impact fees may be higher than what other were charging. And what I discussed was that it's possible that some of these other utilities built their excess capacity years ago when it was cheaper. So that's what I believe it had to do with was impact fees.
Is that it?
Good job.
Thank you.
And just to state it again, I'll have electronic copies of the presentation and the report, which I haven't seen yet. This is, when I get my copy handed to me in a minute, that'll be the first time I've seen this at all. So it'll be on our website, hopefully by noon tomorrow or so. So go down to the bottom of the homepage, and there should be a link to it there with the presentation.
And just a reminder, there are a couple of technical corrections that we've already identified that we have to make, so just bear that in mind. And to Chris's point, again, I know it was painful for him, but we felt like if we weren't gonna share it with with everybody, but nobody, you know, and that was, again, I didn't want there to be any kind of perceived bias or anything in this. We really tried to keep it, apples to apples and facts and information, and so.
You kept it well hidden.
Amanda, did you give Amanda one?
I did.
Okay. Yeah, do you, yeah.
We'll take one to Bartley and check with Cobb, so that they have.
Yes, yes, I can email them one too. Do you want
I'm happy
a
to
hard
hear
copy?
your email.
I'll email them.
Okay.
We have Amanda, do you need one more?
I'd love one for my council treasurer. I appreciate that.
Well, we do appreciate all the hard work y'all put into this. Our ultimate goal is to make it the best it can be, and I think with all the questions you give us, we got something working.
And I think we said that, we felt that from everybody, that the ultimate, that all of you, all your hearts are in the right places. You want what's best for the county. And so we underscore that, we saw that.
Well, our big frustration is the affordability of what we need to do. It costs so much, and trying to keep our ratepayers, you know, keep them from having to pay so much more.
Oh, I get it.
That's the struggle we all live with. Anybody have anything else before we move on?
Yeah, and no, guys, this does not include the appendices. I made a joke, because with the appendices, it's like 300 pages. So all the appendices will be online, so.
Thank you for not putting that in.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to reading that.
Next item, after the presentation, commissioners to discuss and consider the recommendations of the state. Mr. Elliott, how do you want to start this one off?
Well, if I may, I feel this one is probably best for the commission to discuss amongst themselves. I mean, do you have any recommendations for kicking any of this off?
No, I think, like I said, to Kevin's point, I don't think, it depends on when the clock, in my opinion, wouldn't start until after we finalize this thing. So if you guys wanna take it, read it, come back and discuss it, you got time. So,
Comments due.
comments, yeah.
Unfortunately, I would prefer an opportunity to digest all
Yeah.
of this. Look at more of the detailed information before we open it up for any kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if I'm number one, then fair enough.
Oh, I agree.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
If I could ask this, Angie, would it be possible so that everybody can begin reading this now? And I don't know how people like red line documents or not, but would you be able to provide a red line copy between what changes from today versus the final, so everybody doesn't have to go and read the whole thing again?
Yes, I think.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, so this is not in Word, it was adapted from Word, but I think we can do it in here. Again, I didn't want this to be a PER and look like a
If
PER.
not, just keep a
Or they
listed
could-
summary of the changes.
We can do that, yeah, we can, yeah, we can do
Track
that.
changes in Excel for us or.
Yeah, we can do that. I'll talk with our folks who pulled this together, and it's in InDesign, and I'll talk about how we can do that relatively easily. I think she can just in InDesign, just carry over my track changes from a Word
Or
document.
highlight it, or
Yeah,
they
yeah,
said, just
yeah,
tracking it in a separate
yeah,
document, I think
yeah.
would be fine.
Not a problem.
If the hurricane hits here and knocks power out, we may get this red.
Yeah.
Might be down in a few weeks.
That's fine.
Yeah, if it knocks power out, it won't be red.
I will tell y'all again, there's a lot of this stuff you guys know, the historical documents piece, but I felt like it was good to have all of this in one document. Because I struggled, that was one of the things I kept I had two monitors and all these things open and going back and forth, and so.
with that being said, we'll move on to the next item, which is commissioner's discussion. Does anyone have any matter they want to discuss? On that? Other than that, I think we're ready for a move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Thank you all for coming.